Hey folks, welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. I appreciate you tuning in as always. Apologize for the tone of my voice. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday while I'm recording this, which is a lot earlier than I usually ever get up, but it's kind of the nature of the beast, the way I'm living my life right now, which isn't terrible. I just got back from a long bout of traveling, which I'll tell you about later, but on the show today is someone I knew from when I first started doing comedy in New York City. I knew him, and you'll hear me call him R.G. Daniels on the show, but I want to clarify now that he goes by Ryan Gurian, so under his new professional moniker. So on the show today is my buddy Ryan Gurian, and if you want to check out what he's doing now, and we're going to follow his whole arc, because he's a guy that was doing comedy in New York City when a lot of the comics that you know now that are very famous and on TV all the time were just about to get to the next level in their career. So it was really cool to hear him talk about that time in New York City, which is a time I wasn't here for. So I always love hearing stories of that time. And we're going to talk about how he moved away from stand-up and what he's doing now with his satirical food blog, NOSHKONG. And we talk about food a bit as well, because as you probably have heard me mention, I travel quite a bit with my fiance. I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that. So we get to talking to food of different regions a bit. So I hope you guys enjoy this. If you enjoyed the show, I would greatly appreciate it if you would tell a friend. If you use Stitcher, you can add us to a favorites playlist. That helps us out, and we are on iTunes as well. So Stitcher and iTunes. And thank you very much for tuning in. I really appreciate that you take the time out of your day to do that. So, and before we get into the chat today, you can follow me on Twitter at @ComicWillCarey, and Ryan Gurian's satirical food blog, NOSHKONG, I believe is noshkong.com. I'll have links in the description for it as well. Thank you guys again for listening, and let's go to my chat with Ryan Gurian, or as I knew him, R.G. Daniels. I think this might be a good way to start, R.G. Daniels. So
Let's first address that.
Yeah, so the thing I was talking about, so you were saying that you are getting further away from current music as you get older. What I have done is I am still seeking out the music I enjoyed in my youth.
Yeah.
But I am doing it for other countries.
Okay.
Like I loved Blink-182 growing up, and I love like Drive Thru Records, all those pop punk and punk rock bands. And I just have had to like go to Japan to find other bands that sound like that. Currently, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So for me, it's more like I'm listening to the things that I enjoyed listening to when I was younger, but I'm probably more interested in hearing the music that influenced that music.
Right.
So I just read the Beastie Boy book.
Oh, how was that?
It's phenomenal. I mean, if you're a fan, you'll love it. It's really a New York book. It's also about the Beastie Boys, obviously, but it's really a romanticization of the early 80s New York kind of early hip-hop, dance club, hardcore scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they, rail off the locations, and you're walking around the city with them as they visit these, locations, the Danceteria and the Mud Club, and they go see Black Flag, and they're hearing, they're going to see Black Flag, but on the way, they pass by a record store that's blasting dancehall reggae, or dub reggae as it was at the time.
Right.
So you really get a feel for the tapestry of music going on in New York, and that's what I'm interested in, because that obviously trickled down to them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like finding like your heroes' sources, like just going deeper and deeper with it. That's something I would love to do, and especially like a band like that, who I feel is like very New York centric. Like New York is very much a part of their identity.
Yeah,
I got to read that, because
And I imagine part of why it might resonate with you, because I don't know if you would agree with this. I view you as a very New York kind of guy.
Yeah.
You know, are you born and raised in?
Yeah. I'm always reluctant to say Staten Island, but that's where I'm from. I couldn't prevent that. Right. So I it sounds a little shoosh to say that I identify more with Brooklyn, but I do, because when I grew up in Staten Island, I didn't really feel like I fit in. So that's why I left when I was 18 and left for good when I was 23.
Yeah, I could see that.
So I am a New Yorker, but I'm from Staten Island.
Right. There's Staten Island puts like an asterisk on your New York record.
Go out and tell people that you're from Staten Island and look at their reactions.
Yeah. Well, leaving Staten Island, that's like the I'm going to get out of this small town and move to the big city, but the big city's just a boat ride away.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
It's 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
And nobody ever wanted to go. That was always something that baffled me.
Yeah, I've been in New York for almost it'll be 10 years next year. So 9 this year, and the only times I've ever gone to Staten Island are to go do spots at Full Cup.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't know what else is going on out there, other than I view it as like that's where the mob lives, and like retired mob and firefighters. That's all I got for Staten Island.
I mean, there's that. You're not far off. That's like, there's great people on Staten Island, and certainly if you're interested in the cultural anthropologic angle of it, it's a place to visit for sure.
Oh yeah,
because you'll get a whole different perspective on New York and on life by hanging around Staten Island. For the most part, I mean, it's weird because it's an island, so it's isolated from all that enriched sort of 5-borough culture that we're supposed to embrace. So Staten Island just kind of adopted its own identity, its own personality, for better or worse. And people either really dig it or people either don't. I think for me, I had to get out.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't inspired by it. But yeah.
I could see that. Yeah, because you think of like neighborhoods in Manhattan as being very like creatively inspiring places, or even parts of Brooklyn. Queens, I feel like that's going to start changing. But like, you know, Nas is from down the road, and like there's some, and Nicki Minaj is, I think, from Queens also, and Aquafina. But you think of like Brooklyn as being like really creative place. Definitely, like you think of like Lower Manhattan as being a cultural and like creative hub. But then when you go to Staten Island, there's just nothing.
There's a creative there is a creative presence on Staten Island. I just feel like it is dwarfed by, as you said earlier, the firemen and the mob.
Right.
So I know there are some great people out there doing some really fun things, but they're never going to get the attention and the spotlight as, say, something in Bushwick.
Of course.
It's unfortunate, but that's just how Staten Island is, you know, when you walk into a restaurant and there's one table being really loud, you're going to associate that one loud table with being that way.
Of course.
But there might be somebody sitting at that table worthy of the Pulitzer Prize.
Yeah.
Is that a good analogy?
No, I see it. There's like again, like there's like a diamond in the rough sort of thing, but you're not going to notice it around the clatter.
Yeah.
Unless you're really looking for it.
Yeah.
So what neighborhood in Staten Island did you grow up in?
It was called Annandale.
Annandale. And how far away from the ferry is that?
Too far. It was like a half-hour drive without traffic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, like I said, when I was 18, I went to school in Pennsylvania. I graduated in May of 2001. That was right before 9/11. And then I lived at home for like another year and then took off and actually moved to Queens. So when I was 23, I left Staten Island and never looked back.
Right.
Yeah.
So and what was your like family life like on Staten Island? Like, what did your folks do?
My mom was a teacher, and then eventually she became an assistant principal.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was he sold ad space for magazines.
Oh, so like advertising?
Yeah, he's like an account guy.
Uh-huh.
He was more Pete Campbell than Don Draper, I suppose, is the best way to explain it.
Yep, that makes sense to me. So
yeah.
And did you have like a creative household growing up? I'm always interested in tracing these kind of lines to how we all end up in this.
Yeah,
doing this.
I know what you're driving at. So I'm the youngest of three, and I'm the only boy.
Okay.
And my best friend became my own imagination, which was quite vivid, if I remember.
I can imagine so, because from what it sounds like you're describing to me, you had almost this kind of like almost a suburban existence next to a major city. So I've talked about this with lots of people, and that kind of boredom is important for nurturing a creative imagination.
Yeah, that's right. That's 100% right, because, bored people don't like to be bored, I think.
Right.
So you are, what is it? The mother of invention, so on and so forth. You know what expression?
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah. So in order to entertain myself, I basically created worlds for myself. I mean, I was, a kid.
Yeah.
They weren't like anything to, write a novel about now.
Right. But you're out there like, I don't know if you had a yard or not out in Staten Island, but you're like just imagining like you're just somewhere else in a completely different world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can relate to that.
I did a lot of acting out my fantasies too. Like I love, I was an 80s kid, so I loved wrestling. The 80s were marked with big personalities, especially if you're a kid.
Oh yeah, especially if you're watching like WWF as a kid.
WWF, Pee Wee Herman, Mr. T. I mean, these are all, if you're, a kid, those are huge personalities.
100%.
And they're loud and they're colorful and they're distinct. And so when you're a kid watching that kind of stuff, it's natural to want to kind of go off on your own and start reenacting your own fantasies and imagination. And so, I'm a bit of a nerdy guy, and I was certainly a nerdy kid. I was scrawny, so I was also picked on a bit. So it was like a refuge. Like I always had my own imagination to turn to when I didn't feel like dealing with reality. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total. I vibe with that.
A lot of creative people, I think, feel the same way, feel similarly.
Yeah, 100%. And I always felt like that was a place, and I think about people wanting control of at least something in their lives a lot, because so much is outside of your own control, but you at least have a few tangible things that you can manipulate. And when you're a kid and you're basically, your life is being dictated because you're by your parents, if you at least have this like one little thing, you're like, this is mine. So were you into comedy as a kid also, or did that come later?
No, that came like way later. Like not like even in high school, like stand up was like, well, stand up in particular, because I know comedy is a lot of things.
It is.
Because I did, now that you mention it, I did like comedy, but I don't think I came around to stand up until much later. So like when I was in middle school or high school, the PBS stations would air British sitcoms, Britcoms, to the untrained ear. And, I would go over to my friend's house and we'd sit there and watch them with his older brother, his older brother was one of these guys that would repeat lines back to the TV. Not because we didn't really understand the jokes, but we just enjoyed the cadence and the rhythm to them. And so my friend's older brother would hear a line on like the TV show Blackadder, which was a Rowan Atkinson show.
Yeah.
And he would repeat that back, and that's almost what we'd be laughing at. It wasn't so much what was being said as much as it was how it was being said.
Sure.
And so there was that, there was also there were the movies, the dumb comedy movies that were out there, like Bill and Ted.
Sure.
So I feel like that was how I initially got enamored with comedy.
I would relate to that as well. I think my introduction into like goofiness necessarily or silliness was like early 90s Nickelodeon animation.
Yeah.
So like
yes.
So like Real Monsters, Rocco. Those were, I think, the more silly ones compared to like Rugrats or Doug, or Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
Which I haven't done this in a while, but I talked about how my mom wouldn't let me watch The Simpsons, but I was allowed to watch Ren and Stimpy,
right.
Which I think is a poor choice.
It's weird, yeah.
Yeah, it's an odd choice. But like,
do you think that's because Ren and Stimpy was like, it was cloaked in this? It's children's television.
I think so.
Whereas The Simpsons was almost put on the map because, Bart said the word ass or something.
Yeah. Or like it's considered, or I guess it's considered more adult.
Yeah.
More adult situations, and not in like the like pornography term adult situations.
Right.
But like just more grown up stuff. And so she had like read something. But then I guess no one ever wrote an article in the newspaper back then about how Ren and Stimpy is basically just watching Ren commit domestic violence against Stimpy.
Yeah.
For most of the show.
Like when you go back and watch it, especially knowing what we know about the guy,
yeah,
it's like, well, this is some dark shit. It's dark and it's gruesome and it's existential and it's won't go so far as to say deep, but it certainly exists like on these on the ends of the world.
Oh yeah,
that make you like stare and just like wonder what is really behind this. I know it's booger comedy, but these two seem really mentally unwell.
Yeah, and there's a certain like an absurdism that like it's not just like slapstick like the Looney Tunes where it was like kind of bizarre.
Yeah,
like there was like, and again, kind of like stuff didn't resolve most of the time. One episode ended with Stimpy like basically blowing up the show because he hits the history eraser button.
Yes,
and everyone gets erased.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff, or like the weird close-ups.
Loved it. Yeah. The animation, yeah. The music, like there'd be a lot of, odd symphonic, arrangements going on in the background, and it was a well put together show.
I think so. My dad and I still sing the Royal Canadian Kilted Yaxman songs too sometimes whenever I go down.
Yeah.
And visit him in Maryland.
Hell yeah.
So you're growing up on Staten Island, and you're like, I got to get the fuck out of here. And so you went to college in Pennsylvania?
I went to school in Pennsylvania. Yeah.
What part of Pennsylvania?
Wilkes-Barre.
And what did you study?
Well, I was a communications major, but I really wanted to. I thought at the time that I really wanted to get into radio.
I could see that.
That's what I was. I mean, I did radio shows there, and they were initially music, and then I kind of drifted away and tried to like be like a Howard Stern for college radio.
Oh yeah,
like my ego was really, at volume 10. Because I'm like, I'm going to be the Howard Stern of college radio, and I'm going to get on I'm going to get headlines, and the school paper wrote something about me, and that just like made me feel like a rock star.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, I was like 20, so the faculty.
Like, I'm going to be a shock jock.
Yeah, like I didn't realize how bad I came off though. Like, and I wasn't. It wasn't. Like I was trying in my own 20-year-old brain, I was trying to push the boundaries. I wasn't trying to get women naked in the studio.
Sure.
But I was certainly trying to like do bits that would otherwise be questionable.
Sure.
One of the bits we did was blatantly offensive Sean Connery. So that right there tells you
Yeah,
we're not fooling anybody. Like we know, like
exactly. Well, I feel like that kind of setup is if you're going to get perturbed, it's on you at that point because you've already set up that it's blatantly offensive.
Yeah,
that's just
that was
personally though.
That was the goal. Like, let's beat them to the punch. Let's state that we're going to be offensive and then just be offensive. But like. That doesn't work when you're a 20-year-old kid in college. There's faculty advisors and there's administration, and it's not like we get paid advertisements. It's supposed to be a learning experience, and it was because they kicked me off the air.
Yep, I just think of every time I'm at I'm not grinding open mics as hard as when I first moved here anymore, but when you see like some like young kid, and I say kid, but maybe like 22, 23.
Yeah.
And they love Patrice O'Neal, or they love Bill Burr, or they love all the like, the greatest like, comics that really like poke you in the face kind of. But they don't understand the nuance or that their jokes behind that. They just hear the say something that's going to like,
shock,
but then there's nothing behind it.
Correct. I think that ties in very well with self-awareness. You got to know what you're able to pull off, and you got to know what confidence you could muster in order to be able to tell those jokes.
Yeah, and I think even for and I think Patrice O'Neal, he was very self-aware. Like you weren't gonna. If you were going to try to like say, oh, that's kind of misogynist, or oh, that's kind of hurtful to that group of people, I don't think you were going to surprise him. Like, oh, really?
Right? Yeah.
Because he's like, yeah, I've thought about it, and that's what I said, and then I'm going to flip it on you. So really, the way you're interpreting it is incorrect.
Yeah, I think there's a verve that is lent to the material that those comedians did.
Yeah.
This sort of, I don't care what you think, which could very easily be applied to these open micers as well, but they're not polished.
Yeah. And I love that stuff. I realized a few years ago I could never do that, but which was also very freeing, in that I could enjoy it without having to live up to it.
Yeah.
So you get kicked off the college radio station. And then are you like, oh, what am I going to do now? Or did you try to get another radio show going?
Yeah, no, after like the next semester, I didn't have a show. I had a show there every semester I was at school, except for one, and it was the one following that one. But the next year I came back, I was a senior. Yeah. I mean, the faculty, it was a relatively small school. So, the faculty was a little bit more attuned to what their students' passion was, I suppose. And so they were like, well, we're not gonna, he learned, he made a mistake, we punished him, he wants to get back on the air, let's see if he could play by the rules now. And I did. I was a senior, and I came back and I just did, they had what was called Wicked Wednesday, which was all metal, and because it was a college station, it was all like new metal, like it wasn't even like, it was like indie metal, and like sort of.
What year was this?
2000. I graduated in 01, so 2000 to 2001.
Okay, so yeah, we're right at the beginning of like Stained and Limp Bizkit and all of that kind of metal as part of the mainstream.
Yeah, that was happening, but that's not what we were playing.
What were you playing?
Like thrash metal. I couldn't even think of the names if you said them out loud to me, but because I'm not a metal guy.
Yeah, you don't strike me as a metal.
I'm not a metal guy. I appreciate it, but I'm not a metal guy. But I specifically wanted those slots because I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to, because I was like, look, if I'm not going to be able to do my shtick, then I want to be on the air on a day that is specifically categorized for something that I don't have much knowledge of.
And how was that for you?
It was great. Yeah.
Did you find anything that you were like, oh, I kind of like that?
I like all of it. I'm not when it comes to music, except for like pop music. I'm not really too.
You're not tied down to.
No, I'm not tied down. Like I listen to anything, and I'm not like this is fucking garbage. I would never. because some people like it. It's so subjective with music.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of my greatest realizations of being in my 30s now is the being able to say, that's well put together, but it's not for me.
It's not for me. Yeah,
and I can know why people like that.
Pop music really drives me. I mean, it drives me nuts, but not in like an angry way. Like I laugh at pop music more than I am able to empathize with it, or
sure,
subjective, or like what was the Taylor Swift thing? She can't come to the phone right now. She's dead. You know what I'm talking about? This is the new like that just made me crack up.
New like risque Taylor Swift.
There was like a line in one of her songs like, this Taylor Swift can't come to the phone right now because she's dead or something.
You know what that reminds?
It's the most ridiculous thing.
You know what that actually reminds me of? I hadn't heard that song, but it's funny that she did that because I just watched The Dirt on Netflix, the Motley
Crue one. Yeah, I haven't watched it yet. Yeah.
And I'd read the book a bunch of years ago, and there's this is kind of well known, so I'm not going to call it a spoiler. Nikki Sixx like overdosed and died, and paramedics hit him with an adrenaline needle in the chest.
Yeah,
and that's what brought him back to life. And after he checked himself out of the hospital, he left a message on his answering machine that said, "Hey, it's Nikki. I'm not here right now because I'm dead."
Yeah.
That's just what it made me think of.
Yeah. Taylor Swift has often been linked to Nikki Sixx in terms of musical influences.
Yeah. If you want to do the 6 degrees of separation, I'm sure there's some musicologists out there that could like mash up like a Taylor Swift song and a Motley Crue song, and that would be interesting.
I would love it. Dr. Feelgood versus I don't know a Taylor Swift song. 1989.
Yeah,
I know that's the album.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a song also. On the album. Or I'm thinking like if you could sample the bass line of "Looks Like Kill," that bow 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 bow, and then put that over like "We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together," because I consider that like her first foray into being like singing pop songs compared to country songs.
Yeah, I love "If Looks Could Kill." That's a great Motley Crue song.
It is a great Motley Crue song.
Yeah.
Shout at the Devil is great. Motley
Wild Side.
Yeah. I would never say I'm like a hardcore Motley Crue fan, but if their stuff goes on, I'm like, that's well done.
Yeah. It's funny this comes up because I mentioned earlier that I was a kid of the 80s where big personalities ruled and certainly hair metal.
Oh, yeah.
Like I was into, like as a 5th grader, I would buy Dr. Feelgood and Skid Row and Warrant and all the MTV hair metal bands. It was fun.
Yeah, I was really into them in high school as well because VH1 at the time was playing lots of behind the musics, and like Top 40 Hairband Countdown was hosted by Dee Snider.
Yeah.
So that's how I was finding out about like Hanoi Rocks or Poison.
Hell yeah.
Or Trickster.
Sure, Trickster. Holy shit, They were from Jersey.
They were from Jersey. They were
Jersey band.
They were the guys that I think if I had had like a cool older brother, they would have been like the guys in Trickster.
Yeah.
They're kind of obscure, but they had some good songs.
Yeah, they had some hits.
Or my favorite 80s metal power ballad of all time, and I argue this is right up there with Every Rose Has Its Thorn.
Okay, let's hear it.
Do you remember Never Let You Go by Steelheart?
I knew somehow I knew that's where this was going, because when I think of heavy metal ballad, that's that kind of the first song that pops into my mind, because he's got that during the chorus he really belts it out, he really screeches it, but throughout the song it's got that very sort of that guitar, that sort of, I don't know how to describe it, but
it's almost like a counter. The verses, it's almost like a counterpoint to the vocal melody, because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's very, very crystalline, very sort of high frequency, sort of like they're really reaching for something high up, and that's the song I think of when I think of like metal ballad.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to sing a lick of it because I'm not going to do that to your listeners.
He could hit so the notes he could hit were so ridiculously high.
Yeah,
it was. I just still love that song to this day.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
You did. You just launched into the devil horn with your hand.
It's right there.
You were ready to go. I was like, this dude is, get in it, man.
I love all that stuff. Or Heaven by Warren was a great power ballad.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah. I Remember You by Skid Row was pretty big.
That was a really good.
Whitesnake had a few. They were kind of known for it, but I don't like that guy, David Coverdale.
Yeah, I like Here I Go Again.
I don't like when pretty boys try to be gritty.
Yeah, they were very pretty. And, compared to some of the other bands, like L.A. Guns.
Yeah, but they knew they were pretty, and they acted pretty, but sang tough.
Yeah, or Is This Love? That's like an adult contemporary song.
Yeah,
I think
that's a deodorant commercial.
Right. Or what was? I'm trying to think of some other really. Do you remember Wasp?
Yeah, I remember Wasp. Yeah, sure. I don't know that I know many of their songs, though. Rat was around. Bon Jovi, that was like the chick band.
Yeah, Bon Jovi are good. And again,
like my sisters liked Bon Jovi, so I'm like,
band.
Yeah, I can't listen to Bon Jovi.
Well, so Wasp were most famous for this song they wrote called Fuck Like a Beast.
Oh, yeah.
And they had an album cover with like a chainsaw coming out of the guy's crotch. But then, like years later, I found this.
How do you wear underwear? You know, it's so many dilemmas.
I think it's a cod piece, but like you put the underwear under the cod piece. But years later, I found their power ballad.
Yeah,
and it's called "Hold On to Your Heart," and it's like them playing acoustic guitars with like tons of candles lit all around.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and I'm just like, are you not the same band that wrote Fuck Like a Beast?
Yeah. Hey, every artist has to evolve.
Yeah. Well, I mean, two sides to every coin, right?
That's it, man. There's always a heads and a tails.
Yeah. Or I loved White Lion also. I thought Wait was a really good song.
Oh, yeah. White Lion did. Their ballad was When the Children Cry.
Yeah, that one wasn't my favorite, but I did love... I liked The Price by Twisted Sister. That was their power ballad.
Ozzy had a good one with Lita Ford called If I Close My Eyes Forever.
Yes,
that one was really good.
That one was really good. I liked that. I liked that one, and of course, Every Rose Has Its Thorn. That was like one of the first songs I learned.
That's the standard bearer, yeah. That and no, Every Rose Has Its Thorn is probably the that and Home Sweet Home. That's the other one. Mm-hmm. Speaking of Motley Crue, which I love that song too. Mm-hmm. I would sing it at karaoke if I enjoyed karaoke, but I don't.
Yeah. I would love to do live band karaoke. Like,
they used to do that at Arlene's Grocery.
Oh, they did?
They might still do it. It's on Mondays.
Oh, I'll have to see if they're still doing that. I would also like to. I've heard them. They do these. They've started doing these like emo nights at the Bell House on occasion. That's like all like early 2000s like pop punk like Yellow Card and Good Charlotte.
See, that's a little after
all that kind of stuff. I want to go to one of those.
See, in that period, that's when I truly began to start going backwards.
Oh, in what way?
So rather than get into, in the early 2000s, I was already out of college. Mm-hmm. So that's when I started getting a little more exploratory. Like that's when I found the Replacements.
So good.
And like college rock, quote unquote. Uh-huh. The internet was in its infancy at the time. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like there was as much access. I still had to go to the Virgin Megastore in between barking for Ha Comedy Club to like go see what was up. And like, if you like this band, you'll like this band. There was no algorithms out.
Right.
So it was truly a treasure hunt.
Yeah. The only algorithm I had was you get the CD and then you'll open the booklet and you see what bands
they think. That's right.
And then you go and get all those bands and see what they think.
Precisely.
So this is a great way to kind of transition. So you get back to New York, and when did you start doing comedy?
The first open mic I ever did was December 9th, 2002 at the New York Comedy Club.
Nice. 2002. So, because I'm thinking when I met you, because I moved here in 2010, and I remember you had the Sunday night stand-up show, and then you did the open mic with J Train. Mm-hmm. He's going to do the show eventually, but he's busy, so we've had to reschedule a few times. And you were barking for Ha when the Virgin Megastore was still open.
Yeah.
This is the kind of deep New York history shit that I like.
That's so funny to me because to me that was when like it all started to turn. Like that around that time was when I enjoyed going to Brooklyn Even because even before 2010, you know, Brooklyn, like I like these old vestiges. I don't know if I'm using that word right, but these old sort of callbacks to New York. Like, I don't mind the new New York, but I love finding pockets of old New York. And during that time, you had to go to Brooklyn to go find that. You still have to. It's just not. It's shrinking. Old New York is shrinking in Brooklyn. But at that time, I did go to Williamsburg. To clarify Williamsburg, it was never cool. I know a lot of people seem to think that there was this time where Williamsburg was where everything was happening. There was maybe a 7-month window where Williamsburg was happening because all of the artists that were getting priced out of the East Village were making their way there because it was affordable and it was just industrial waterfront. There was nothing going on. And this happened in the early, like up until probably around 2007, 2008. And that's when it turned and became rich. There was never this middle ground happening in Williamsburg. It was always either a shithole, and then almost instantly it became this insufferable earmark of greed
and trust fund
and judgment. So it was never what everyone. It was never this.
There's
this launching pad.
There's no golden age of Williamsburg.
Not that I mean, I'm sure some people have different opinions, but not from what I remember. And people, especially the comedy scene, would try to capitalize on what was happening there. And shows in Williamsburg in that era, they rarely worked, if ever. I only remember one doing well, and it was called Big Terrific.
Oh yeah, at a Littlefield.
At Cameo.
Oh, a Cameo.
It was a place called the Cameo Gallery, which is probably closed by now.
Probably.
There was also the Galapagos space, which is closed, and that they opened up a remote location in Detroit now. But Galapagos, that's where Murderfist performed a few times. Then there was a place called Soundfix that people did shows at. Murderfist also performed there, but other people ran shows there. There was... there were a few venues that are like, I can't remember their names, but the scene was trying to dust itself off after Rafifi closed.
Right.
And they thought Williamsburg was that natural step.
And was like the Union Hall and the Bell House a thing at this point?
Probably, but they're not in Williamsburg.
No, they're in Gowanus.
They're in Gowanus, or at the time still considered Park Slope. Yeah.
Wow. So you're almost like the guy in 300 who leaves the final battle to tell the tale. Yeah,
dude, I saw all this shit. I went to the shows. Like I was still, I was still hopeful.
Well, because these are the kind of times that I hear stories about. I'm like, oh, I wish I could have been in New York to have gone and seen, like, I don't know, like Kristen Shaw or John Mulaney.
It was cool. I got to admit, it was cool. I remember. I mean, if you really want to dive into the weeds here, I told you that I started doing my first open mic was 02.
02 at New York
Comedy Club. So I was I think I was off the island by then, and I was very timid about doing stand-up at first. I think like anybody, like I was grinding away at 2 jobs. I was with a girlfriend, and it was just hard to find time to do it, but I would go to open mics when I could.
Right.
And I remember going to this open mic at the Parkside Lounge called Tuesday Night Trainwreck. It was run by a guy named Joey Gay, who I still see. I think he lives in my neighborhood now. We still bump into each other.
Oh, that's funny.
At the farmers markets. But he ran this open mic where people like Mulaney and Nick Kroll and Eddie Pepitone and probably Wyatt Cenac, like all these people used to just like stop by and like run a 5. And there I was, like, like it was a lottery. So like, I would always be going up like 41st, not realizing like that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, just not realizing that these lottery open mics are completely fixed so that your friends go up early.
Right. So that's at the point where like the friends that are like about to like get maybe like that first bump into the comedy industry but they're like going up for, they got priority at the bucket mics, are like Mulaney and Nick Kroll and
right.
these people.
These guys who are, they're doing well, they're poised to take that next step, but they still, I mean, at the end of the day, these guys just love doing stand-up.
Yeah.
So they're going to go do it wherever they want. And they just happen to have earned this privilege to be able to go up early at a bucket mic, I suppose.
Totally.
That's a privilege. But,
I think so.
they didn't stop by to pull weight. They wanted to run jokes. They wanted to run their set, and they just happen to know the person running the mic. So sure, why not? Why not take advantage of that?
Yeah. Makes sense to me.
I don't think anybody was ever upset that was happening.
Yeah. I realize that's kind of like, it's just like a natural byproduct of once you're around for a while and you know people and you have friends, that kind of happens. I've done that before, and I'm not John Mulaney or Nick Kroll, so I don't begrudge.
Close though. I put you third on that list.
Oh well, you're very kind. So and didn't Robin Williams do your Sunday show once? I looked back because when I reached out,
no.
Why did I think that?
I have no idea.
I swear I thought that for some reason. I must have been, because when it was funny when I went back to like message you to do the podcast. I think the only other Facebook interaction we had was me asking to do your show.
Sure, yeah. I hate Facebook Messenger because
for that reason.
Well, yeah, you see, there are people since Sunday Night Stand Up ended, or there are people that I will occasionally reach out to because I'm involved in some other stuff now. Mm-hmm. And like, I'll see the last time we interacted, it was like 2011. And it was sometimes, it's not, sometimes it was unrelated to Sunday Night Stand Up, but sometimes it is. And it's like, or sometimes it's me asking them for a spot and they don't reply. And it's like, well, what reaction am I supposed to have to seeing this? And yeah, you're just supposed to like laugh it off because.
Well, I know that we've had interactions in person and on Facebook just talking about like random bullshit because if I remember correctly, and didn't you post something about how all hot sauce tastes the same to you? And then
yes.
And then everyone yelled at you for like 3 days.
Yes. I got unfriended by 2 people. I mean, it's
Jesus.
Well, that's a whole social media thing.
Yeah,
that I will. I mean, that would. I mean, I get riled up by that. But that was. I also laugh at stuff like that because it's like I don't do it on purpose. I'm not trying to troll anyone. And if I was, that's harmless trolling. It's hot sauce,
of course.
But I when things like that, because occasionally that'll happen on my feed where I'll just I'll make such a declarative statement about how you're supposed to eat something.
Yeah.
That it'll burrow under people's skin. In this case, just for whoever's listening, I posted on Facebook once, all hot sauce tastes the same. Don't at me. If you were blindfolded and I put a thimble of each in front of you, you would not be able to tell the difference. It was something along those lines. It's not verbatim, paraphrasing. 97 comments. Like 4 likes maybe. But like everybody just wanted to say that I was wrong. And one guy who you might know, his name is Nathan Rand. I learned that he makes his own hot sauce. This is what is interesting about social media. This may be the only good thing about it, is that you do learn something about someone that you might not have known.
Yeah. And
he said he makes his own. I don't know if he grows his own peppers or not. I think he mentioned that he did. And he wanted to invite me over and say, why don't you come by and we'll do a taste test and I could show you the subtle differences and the nuance of it, because it's not, you're eating supermarket bullshit. Basically telling me that I'm eating the Taylor Swift equivalent of hot sauce when I should be having the Steelheart.
Totally. The Steelheart, or I'm trying to think of a more, because I make this analogy a lot when it comes to punk rock. Like, I think of bands like Blink-182 and Sum 41 and all those kind of radio pop punk bands as being like a Frappuccino at Starbucks.
Yeah.
And then you listen to like the bands they were into, like Screeching Weasel and the Descendants.
Hell yeah.
That's like a cup of black coffee.
And
then you listen to like Black Flag, Fugazi. That's like single pour over.
Yeah.
And then if you get into like DOS and like all of the really like obscure DC hardcore bands, that's like a coffee master who he makes one cup once a week. You just have to line up and hope you're lucky to get it. And
That's
he pours,
single blend Nicaraguan.
yeah, like
Third source bean.
yeah, something from like the deepest, darkest heart of Africa, and it's luwak also. I've never had luwak coffee, but I'm not a.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what it is, but it sounds delicious.
Luwak coffee is coffee made by this small marsupial, eats coffee beans, shits them out.
Oh,
and the digestive process makes the coffee taste really different.
Okay. Yes, I've heard of this before. I didn't know it was called that.
Yeah, I think it's actually a luwak is the name of the animal that
Gotcha.
uses. So you're in. So
We are the kings of tangents.
yes. Well, this is the kind of stuff I love doing because like I'm getting to know you as a person.
Yeah.
In a way that I didn't get to know you from doing stand-up next to you for years and years.
I'm much more comfortable with who I am these days.
Same.
I was very guarded back then.
I kind of feel the same way. I feel like a ease that comes from not... I still do shows and I still create things, but my self-esteem does not live or die on getting on that show or having a good set on that show.
Isn't it liberating?
It's very liberating.
To just make your own shit and be happy with that, and if other people dig it, then they come around?
100%, dude.
Yeah.
It really is. And then when I do stand-up, it's fun.
Yeah.
And I can, like, really put my all into the performance. Because I've done a couple of... there's a few shows I've done recently where I've gone up and because I feel like every time someone books me on a show, I have a responsibility to do as well as I can on that show.
Yeah.
So I'll do a couple new things, but I'm mostly trying to get laughs. But some people I think who probably get booked more than I do, I've gone on some shows where they just go up and throw out premises, and I'm like, can you fucking try, please? There's someone who's like regretting every life decision they've ever made, and they really want to set.
Yeah.
And they would try, whereas you're not right now.
Yeah.
So that's just my going. Like,
it's rough. It's a grind. It's tough.
Yeah. So this is kind of what I'm curious about, because if I am tracing this correctly, and I kind of want to know if you could take me through this time. There was a time, I think, when you tapped out from stand-up, and then you were in Texas.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. Tell me about that time.
There's not much to really say except that I think I had reached. I think I had reached a point in stand-up where, you know, it was a combination. It was a convergence of a lot happening. I had stopped drinking, so I was achieving some sort of clarity in my life. And I looked around and I realized that I had effectively not destroyed everything, but kind of, I don't know. I didn't have a lot to speak of. I wasn't proud of where I was. And I knew that I was a smart person, and I knew that I had a lot to offer, and yet I didn't have a whole lot to show for it. I upset a lot of people. I thought. I mean, maybe I didn't. I was probably in my head because I was a very insecure person.
Sure.
I had never been endorsed by older comics or, you know, comics who are beginning to taste a little bit of success.
Sure.
And that made me feel like, well, maybe I'm not that good. I mean, I know that jealousy and envy run rampant, but I still see comics helping each other out. And I still see older comics bringing younger comics out on the road, and that wasn't happening for me.
Right.
And finally, I think I just was not enjoying it anymore. I wasn't having fun. It's like,
yeah,
I was listening to people talk about how they were dreading having to go do this spot, or talking about how this is probably going to suck, or how they just don't want to go. Like, how do I like people trying to back out, and like, that was kind of like resonating a little bit with me, because I, you know, full disclosure, I don't particularly enjoy being in front of people and unwanted attention. I like writing, but I always thought stand-up was the way into that. But then that wasn't happening either. Like, I had reached this point where I was submitting packets here and there.
Yeah.
But it just seemed like I fell so far off the radar that I didn't exist in comedy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't care to pull myself up by my bootstraps. Like, I didn't want to reflect on that.
Sure.
I just go ahead.
Well, and also if it's not fun anymore, then that's why keep doing that to yourself? Because at that point you might as well just have like a regular job.
Yeah, well, funny you mentioned that.
I also think a lot of comics, maybe at our level, maybe a little bit higher than ours, not like the pros, not like the Mike Lawrences or Dan St. Germains, but like, I think sometimes comedians forget that this should be fun. Like like you obviously start doing comedy because you enjoy watching comedy, so I try very hard not to lose that.
Yeah. Well, it's fun, but it's also I think there's a level of passion that must be exhibited in order to tolerate the amount of bullshit that is thrown in your face. There's no money. You're around very toxic and dysfunctional people. Yeah. You're doubting yourself sometimes. You're dealing with audiences. I mean, stand-up has to be the circumstances have to be pitch perfect in order for you to succeed. I often equate it with addiction. Mm-hmm. Because once you have a good set, that's all you chase.
Yeah.
And you talk to comedians who reach these levels of success and it's never enough. You know, to me, I equate it with addiction. It's a very addictive behavior that's exhibited by people who choose to go forward with stand-up.
I think I agree with you, and that's something I always remember from when Carlos Mencia was on WTF, and that was like what really got me into listening to and following his show, is that because he didn't drink or smoke, his drug was the rush from crushing.
Yeah, it's an adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
I can't, like, I have tried to explain to non-comics what killing on stage feels like.
Yeah.
And the best thing I came close to was it's probably like skydiving. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's insane. It's an insane rush that you feel you're in control of, even though you're really not most of the time.
Uh-huh.
And then when it's over, it's like, okay, well, I'm on the ground now and I feel amazing, but now I gotta get back in my car and go home.
Right. How soon can I get back in the plane?
Right, exactly. We need to book this again. So, I lost, that drive, that passion, that ambition. And the move to Texas was not comedy related. It was because I had gone back to school. Uh-huh. I was changing my life. I was trying to make good decisions for myself for once. And so I went back to school. I learned a practical skill, and I couldn't get an interview in New York. So I was like, maybe I should leave New York. And Austin just seemed to be the place that had a hot job market.
Mm-hmm. So Austin's a cool city too.
From a distance. So it's cool for 5 days on vacation. But I went out there and I did do stand-up there for a little bit. Yeah. And I wasn't taking it seriously. I was just doing it to meet people because I didn't know how to... I went to Austin by myself. I didn't know anybody there.
Right.
I didn't know how to make friends except to go to open mics. So I did, and I did make some friends. But, I just... the same sort of feelings came rushing back. It was just like, I don't really enjoy doing this. And it's not like I was getting booked out there either, Sure. It's not like I had made any headway. I think there's a couple of videos of me online of me doing stand-up out there. One of them was they do like a contest every year that all you have to
Austin's
do is
funniest.
Yeah, it's anybody could do it. You just pay the money and you're like, all right, you're in, great. So, I'd had years of experience, so it wasn't like I wasn't funny either. Like, sure. I knew how to work a room, but I wasn't taking it seriously.
Right.
And while I was out there, I decided to try improv, and that actually took.
Oh, really?
And I still kind of dabble here.
Uh-huh.
And I found myself enjoying that much more. And it's interesting because, obviously improv is the butt of everyone's joke a lot of times. And I get it. Like, the theater kids go do improv and the outsiders go do stand-up or the loners.
Yeah.
But improv hit me because I ended up, it wasn't quite as what I thought it was going to be. It unlocked a lot of things creatively that I didn't anticipate, and I enjoyed that sort of blind side.
What were some of those things?
How to work with a group.
Yeah.
How to listen. How to, I also suffer from social anxiety. And, I get the same shit. I get the panic attacks. I get all that shit that everybody gets.
Yeah.
But working with improv, you build trust. And failure is so microscopic because you're with other people.
Yeah.
That it barely registers, which is not to say that it's okay to just do shitty all the time, but it teaches you to not be afraid of that.
Yeah.
And, I learned out there how to get out of my head. Because that was one of the things my first teacher taught me. Get out of your head, get into your body. Just go with it. Just do shit. Don't try to be funny. Funny will happen. And that can't happen in stand-up. You have to make funny happen in stand-up. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Improv is a little different. And, people rag on improv, and I get that. It is, seemingly this very silly and weird thing that people feel has no value or skill attached. But that's just not true, because improv is a gateway to other shit. I use it to help with my writing, and I use it, in areas of my life. To be with groups of people.
Oh, yeah.
And to be positive. I was always so negative, too. I was always so pessimistic and cynical when I was a stand-up.
Yeah.
And then I started doing improv, and, the walls came down a little bit. And I was so much more open to being around people and being accepting of who they were. And it didn't matter that they were not like me or that they were into shit that I wasn't into. I learned all that shit taking improv classes. People poo-poo it. That's seriously what I took away from it. I mean, it didn't start out that way. I had to reflect on everything I had learned in improv. And there's people in there that you're just like, I don't care very much for this person. There's always, someone or, around in your class or, on a show or something. But,
Totally.
but it's like, it's a very articulate. No, it's a very focused way of dropping your guard and getting out of yourself.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. That and again, just thinking about collaboration, because it's so hard to exist in a vacuum. And I feel like stand-ups that don't exist in a vacuum are kind of regarded not as elite as maybe some other ones. I know Kevin Hart has people that he works with. Ron White has people he collaborates with as far as jokes in his stand-up. I think I don't know who else, but I think collaboration specifically is in comedy is a highly underrated skill.
Yeah.
And improv is the purest form of that. And again, improv informs everything else. All of your favorite TV shows that have really loose, quick, snappy back and forth dialogue. That's all improv. That's all improv based. Sketch writing. I think also just the ability to give yourself permission to fail is easier than I think it is with stand-up comedy, because when you give yourself that permission to fail, you got to dig yourself out quick, or else the whole set can go sideways.
Yeah.
So that, man, I'm glad that that it was so positive for you.
It was. I mean, and I was ready for it too. You know, I think if I had taken an improv class when I was like 26, and I was still,
you might have been a little closed off to.
Oh yeah, totally. They all would have hated me because I wouldn't have, submitted myself to the process. I wouldn't have been as open-minded.
Yeah.
And I was, it came at a time in my life where I was ready for something like that because I had turned my shit around. I was in such a swamp of self-hatred and doubt and pessimism and insecurity, maybe a little paranoia. I mean, I was really in a bad place towards the end, like right around, 2012, 2013. And I was in a really shitty place. And that's led to me, drying out from the booze a little bit, going back to school, moving away from New York, taking some improv, just making good decisions. Yeah. Of course, now I'm back from Texas.
Yeah. Because I want to trace that also. What did you go to Texas to study?
Well, I was in school here. I went to advertising school.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah, because I'm a writer. That's my trade. I'm a writer through and through. I will always be a writer. That is who I am. That is what I embody. And I was like, comedy's not working out, so where can I apply this skill? And advertising has copywriters. Of course, now it's all different. But that was my thinking. I was like, well, I like to be creative and I like to write. So what's a way to do that where I could make money that isn't in entertainment and advertising? Yeah. Little did I know it's just as difficult to break into that.
Right.
But that was where my interests were. And it, it worked out. I mean, it all worked out. I mean, I ended up I'm in marketing now. I don't particularly want to talk about that, but I landed on my feet and I have a salary. I mean, I didn't have a salary. 2016 when I was in Texas is when I got my first like office job. Like I had never had a salary before.
Right.
I didn't know how to like catalog that in my brain. Like I get all this money every week. Like I didn't know. I got the job. I bought a fucking big TV and I bought cookware. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like, I guess this is what having money is. Yeah. And then I was like, oh wait, I better save some of this. One day I'm going to be old. So
well, that's kind of how I'm at with my job now, because my job is creative and also is the best paying job I've had. So like, I reflect back on my years of just like the suffering and the starving and the struggling. I'm like, oh, I will never begrudge the fact that I did that, because it makes me appreciate where I'm at now. But probably could have saved myself a few years.
There is a creative side and a practical side. They're always going to battle each other. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I don't get a little envious when I watch a TV show and I recognize some of the names in the credits. But look, I can't immediately assume that they're happy or that I can't try to figure out all the bullshit that they had to go through in order to get that credit or in order to get that gig, and also to wonder if there's going to be another one for them after that. I can only really do what I'm doing. And I think that was another thing I learned is how to put those blinders on, because I never was able to do that.
Exactly. The whole keep your head down and just do your thing.
Yeah, man. Just make shit. Make this podcast and go to mics, do your jokes, write whatever else you do. Like when you make something that makes you feel good, look, man, I crack myself up at the shit that I do now, and that's really all that's important to me. Like I'm laughing at it, and if other people are on board, that's cool. I'm putting it out there now.
Yeah, dude.
So my priorities changed. I no longer felt like I needed to satisfy some sort of agenda that I had created in my mind, quite frankly. And I think that's why all my peers, or the peers that had succeeded, like Mark Norman and Lawrence and all the guys that I was at at open mics with, I think that they succeeded because it didn't make a difference to them how they were coming off. I think that they enjoyed what they were doing, and I'm sure they have their psychological issues like anybody.
Yeah.
But I think, like I said, my threshold for the BS was low, and theirs is obviously very high.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter to them that they had to go through the shit that they had to. I think that they genuinely loved this process of writing a joke and working on it until it was perfect.
I think so. and Norman and those two in particular, especially because I just hear like when Norman does Conan or I see like something Mike writes some like eloquent takedown of the latest Marvel or DC movie.
Yeah,
I'm just like, mwah, hats off to you, sirs.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about a little bit about what you're doing now, because you're doing some live shows, and then you've got this outlet for NOSHKONG, for writing.
Yeah,
that's also food related. So let's talk about that a little bit. How did that get started?
It's still relatively new. It's maybe a little more than a year, and it's my website, NOSHKONG. NOSHKONG.com.
And is it a food blog, like
yes,
food blog?
Yeah. So it's a satire of food blogs. It's the elevator pitch is if eater.com meets The Onion.
I like it.
Yeah.
Because and again, being a New York guy, I love talking about great food spots in New York City that people don't know about. You went somewhere in Bay Ridge, I feel, recently. It wasn't like the clam thing. It wasn't like the clam stick things, but you got like Uzbekistani food somewhere.
Oh fuck yeah, man! Yeah.
What was that? Because that looked really good. And Uzbekistan is one of those countries that I know nothing about, but I think I might go there.
Yeah. Uzbekistan food. They, a lot of the signage for those restaurants will say Central Asian, because that's where it is. So. Yeah. There are influences from, like, and it was also part of the Soviet Union. Should also mention that. So there's a clash of influences from like Russia and like the Ukraine and like the Soviet region, but also like Mongolia and some of the Asian countries. So every culture has their protein stuffed starch, right?
Yes.
Ravioli, dumplings, you know what I'm driving at.
100%. I just engorged myself on momos in Nepal. So
there you go. Samosas, empanadas, everybody's got one. So for this particular culture, it's called a samsa. SAMSA. And it is, depending on what you order, I got beef ones, and it was like stewed beef. In a very flaky pastry dough with like a black sesame topping. So you could kind of see the Asian/Russian. Yeah.
It's like dense meat wrapped in like a dumpling kind of thing, and the sesame.
And the sesame,
very Asian.
It was delicious. They served them to me with like a tomato sauce, I think. Not like Italian tomato sauce, like a very tempered, almost like a stewed red pepper tomato kind of dipping sauce. But I don't think I think that's just that restaurant.
Might be. What was that place called?
I don't remember.
Okay. I'm gonna.
It wasn't in Bay Ridge though. It was Midtown. It was on the. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then that'll be easier.
Yeah. But I do eat in Bay Ridge a lot. I went to. They have. There's great Lebanese food in Bay Ridge, great Italian food too, obviously, but really great Mideastern, Lebanese specifically, awesome. Kind of food. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds good. Do you ever go out to Flushing?
I upset people when I say this. I have not made it out there yet.
All right, I'm gonna help you out because we're buddies.
Okay.
Well, first off, because we were talking a little bit before we started recording, that if you combine too many like restaurants that combine Chinese, Korean, Japanese, I find those personally annoying.
Yeah.
I'm a little snobby about that. But Chinatown in Flushing has some of my favorite spots. And I'll tell you about them because I like you.
All right. Is one of them Dumpling Galaxy?
Is it? I think that might be the name of that place. It's located in the basement of some mall that's next to a bootleg DVD table.
I couldn't tell you. I just know I never been. I know it's out there, and I know that it's often mentioned in every like top 10.
If I don't know if it's the same place, but the two of these places I don't know the name of them. I can only tell you like how you get to them. Like you get off the 7 and then
I love that.
And then you walk to the library and then you go down a series of stairs and then you make a left and you sit on a table that's literally like a foot high. So
yeah.
I look hilarious.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how do you wedge in there?
I make it work. And then I know this place is good because I think I had lamb and chive dumplings at this place, and I know it's good because I used to go out there and get something to eat before I was taking an editing class at Queens Public Television.
Sure.
And this Asian guy was sitting next to me, and he turns to me and says, "Excuse me, I have to ask you, how do you know about this place?" So that's how I know it's good.
Did he say it like that?
He said,
how do you know about this place?
He said it more in a way of like, "Excuse me, I have to ask you, how did you hear about this place?" Like he was genuinely, like he wasn't being rude. He was genuinely
curious because I feel like there are efforts made to keep some places out of the mainstream, so to speak.
And I agree. That's why I don't tell too many people about these places. The other place I'll tell you about is a shabu shabu place. Have you ever had shabu shabu?
I believe I have, yeah.
It's called Spring. It's very good.
Shabu shabu, refresh my memory. Is it a broad noodle?
It's a sauce, actually.
Okay.
Think of it as like Japanese hot pot.
Okay.
So shabu shabu specifically is the cuisine and a sauce. And it's called shabu shabu because you swish the meat around in the.
Oh yeah, okay.
That's the sound it makes.
Yeah.
My fiance and I went there when she was still my girlfriend. We went for our 2-year anniversary because we had gone to shabu shabu place in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And really enjoyed it. So I was like, I bet there's a place in New York that's good. And then I was like, well, I bet the place in Flushing is better than the place in Midtown.
Yeah.
And we've gone pretty much every couple weeks for the past like 2 or 3
Hell
years.
yeah, but now I'm starving, man. You got me hungry. Queens, in terms of food, I think it's the last. I mean, I genuinely believe it is the last frontier or the last. It's the last area standing for real New York food.
I'm inclined to agree with you.
Like I mentioned before, old New York is shrinking. So it's pretty much all on the outskirts now. Mm-hmm. You know, and there are some scattered places. Like there's a few establishments that stand, you know, on their own. Mm-hmm. But it's really when you start going way out there. You know, like I still go to Greenpoint to get my Polish food.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll kosher deli in, like Midwood or Ditmas Park. I mean, it's great.
Yeah, man.
And Queens still, because Queens was never, like Astoria may have been, and Long Island City may have been part of that wave of gentrification.
Yeah, and I think Sunnyside it was starting to happen. I was afraid with the L train going down.
Yeah, I lived there for a couple of years.
Yeah, I lived in Woodside near 50th Street. I liked it.
But Queens has held on as this hub of authentic food from the cultures that are represented. You know, the big thing in New York now is provincial Chinese food.
What provincial Chinese?
So it's Chinese food, not as you know it from a takeout counter, but from specific regions of China, which is very new to the American palate.
Right.
Because we identify Chinese food as General Tso's. But there's this whole world of flavor and texture and different noodles, and that's all going on in Flushing. It's all happening in Queens.
I gotta find this place because I was in China a couple months ago, and I went to a place called Shanghai Grandma, and I had like my first plate of like Shanghai style pork belly.
Yeah.
And I gotta find somewhere to get it in this city, man, because
it
was delicious.
You may have to go underneath a library again to get something like that. There's also different laws in America that prevent us from really experiencing, what would be considered straight from the source. Mm-hmm. French cheeses and the list goes on and on.
Oh yeah, like in Canada, like I think you can get unpasteurized cheese in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I'm gonna find I'm not.
Want to do a food trip? Let's go on a food adventure.
Let's do a food adventure for the blog.
I'm down,
dude. I'll find like a weekend. I'll message you. We'll do a thing for NOSHKONG.
Hell yeah, man! I'm into it,
dude.
Little photo gallery action.
100%, man.
I'm into it.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much for doing this.
We're done.
Yeah, dude, we did. This was a great chat. I think we covered it all.
Covered a lot. NOSHKONG.com is the website.
Yes. Yeah. What else can we plug? NOSHKONG.com.
That's it, man. That's all I want people to check out for now.
Cool, man. And I wanted to ask you this because I wasn't sure when we were messaging. Do I call you RG or do I call you Ryan?
Well, I mean, I'm going by Ryan these days, but if you want to call me RG, then so be it. That's how I was introduced to you.
Okay, well, I'll put, since this is what you're going by now, it'll be Ryan Daniels.
All right, sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you again, man.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks for having me.
Okay, folks, that's our show. Thank you for listening. It's always good to see people that I knew get a good handle on where they're at and still continue to be creative. And I'm looking forward to setting up that food trip to Flushing with Ryan in the near future. So that should be a good time. You can keep an eye out on his food blog NOSHKONG for that. And you can follow me on Twitter at Comic Will Carey. You can follow the podcast on Twitter at AwesomeDPod. And we are on iTunes and Stitcher. If you want to subscribe or add us to your favorites playlist on Stitcher, that helps grow the show. And of course, if you want to tell a friend who might enjoy this, I would greatly appreciate it. So thank you guys again for listening, and I will see you guys next week between awesome and disaster. Take care, everybody.